October 1935. A restaurant in Newark. Gunfire. Dutch Schultz slumps in his chair. The man who tried to own Harlem is dying on a tiled floor. No speeches. No last stand. Just blood and silence. 3 days later he is dead, and Harlem becomes available. Not empty. Available. Because somewhere uptown, another man is already calculating. His name is Bumpy Johnson, and the men watching him are more dangerous than Schultz ever was. New York in the 1930s does not run on elections. It runs on agreements. At the top sits the Commission, the governing body of American organized crime. The families divide territory. They settle disputes. They prevent chaos that draws federal attention. Among them, one family begins to rise with quiet aggression. The organization that will become known as the Genovese crime family. Disciplined, strategic, patient. They do not need headlines. They need revenue. Harlem is valuable, not for politics, not for culture, for cash. The numbers racket. Nightlife. Later, narcotics. But Harlem is also different. It is majority black, community-driven, suspicious of outside control. The Mafia understands something important. Occupation creates resistance. Partnership creates profit. After Schultz's execution, approved by the Commission, the Genovese leadership faces a decision: invade Harlem directly, or govern it indirectly. They choose the second option because direct control costs bullets. Indirect control costs percentages. Bumpy Johnson is not a loud gangster. He reads philosophy in prison. He memorizes poetry. He studies people. Mentored by Harlem numbers Queen Stephanie St. Clair, he learns discipline over emotion, structure over impulse. He is not trying to conquer New York. He is trying to preserve Harlem's autonomy, but autonomy is relative. After Schultz's death, Johnson negotiates, not from strength, from leverage. He understands the hierarchy. The Mafia controls the city. He controls Harlem's internal network, runners, collectors, community loyalty. He can make Harlem profitable or unstable. The Genovese leadership sees his value. They do not crown him. They recognize him. That distinction matters, because recognition comes with conditions. On paper, there's peace. No open war. No public assassinations. But beneath the surface lies tension. The Mafia supplies. Johnson distributes. Profits flow upward. Control flows downward. This is not equality. It is subcontracted power, and subcontractors are replaceable. The arrangement works through the 1940s. Then the post-war years arrive, and with them heroin. The international pipeline strengthens. Supply moves from Turkey to Marseille to Sicily to New York. Organized crime families secure global connections. The Genovese network tightens its grip. Heroin is different from numbers gambling. It creates dependency. Financial dependency. Financial dependency. Territorial dependency. Harlem streets change. Addiction rises. Police presence increases. Johnson now stands at a crossroads. He can refuse narcotics, or he can participate and maintain influence. He chooses participation, not recklessly, strategically, because refusing supply means losing relevance, and losing relevance means replacement. By the 1950s, the heroin economy reshapes New York's underworld. Johnson becomes Harlem's primary intermediary. But he does not control the source. The Genovese family controls importation and wholesale distribution. Johnson manages retail territory. That imbalance creates friction. The more profitable Harlem becomes, the more oversight increases. Oversight becomes surveillance. Surveillance becomes pressure. Federal narcotics agents begin building cases. Indictments increase. Arrests follow. Johnson serves prison time. Each sentence weakens his direct authority. Inside prison, he maintains influence through reputation. Outside prison, the Genovese leadership tests alternatives. Can Harlem be managed without him? Can another distributor be installed? These are quiet discussions. No headlines. Just calculations. The silent war is not about bullets. It is about dependency. And who depends on whom? Johnson understands something most underworld figures ignore. He is powerful locally, but expendable globally. That realization changes his behavior. He becomes more cautious, more selective, more disciplined. He reinforces loyalty within Harlem. He minimizes unnecessary violence. He keeps disputes internal because he knows one truth: the Mafia tolerates him as long as he is useful, not longer. He does not try to overthrow the Genovese structure. He cannot. Instead, he focuses on control within constraint. Psychologically, this is survival under hierarchy. He is not at war with the Mafia in public. He is competing with them in leverage, and leverage requires stability. As law enforcement intensifies pressure in the 1960s, the strategic environment shifts. Federal agencies target narcotics networks aggressively. Informants increase. Surveillance technology improves. The Genovese family adapts by decentralizing risk. Distance between leadership and street-level distribution grows. Johnson absorbs more exposure. He becomes a buffer, a shield between Harlem and the Commission. That role gives him authority. It also makes him vulnerable, because buffers are sacrificed when pressure becomes too high. Johnson's prison sentences increase. His direct control weakens. Younger figures rise. The system evolves beyond personality, and the silent war enters its final stage. The alliance never collapses publicly. It erodes privately. By the early 1960s, Harlem is changing. Civil rights movements intensify. Public attention shifts towards systemic inequality. Police presence increases in black neighborhoods. Organized crime does not operate in isolation from social change. It adapts. The Genovese leadership understands risk exposure. Heroin brings enormous profit. It also brings federal obsession. Johnson, operating on the street level, absorbs scrutiny first. Raids increase. Wiretaps expand. Associates are flipped. Trust thins. Within Harlem, whispers begin. Is Johnson protecting the community or protecting the supply chain? That question matters, because his authority depends on perceived guardianship. He is not simply a distributor. He is expected to be a stabilizer. But heroin destabilizes everything it touches. Addiction fractures families. Street violence increases, and law enforcement uses that instability as justification for deeper intervention. The Genovese structure remains insulated. Upper leadership rarely appears in indictments tied directly to Harlem retail operations. Johnson does, repeatedly. That imbalance sharpens the silent conflict. There is a difference between control and ownership. Johnson controls territory. The Genovese family owns the pipeline. Ownership determines longevity. Johnson's influence is geographic. The Mafia's influence is structural. As long as heroin flows through international routes secured by Italian syndicates, Harlem remains dependent. Dependency limits. Rebellion. Johnson knows this. He does not attempt open defiance. He negotiates margins, percentages, protections. He ensures Harlem operators are not squeezed beyond sustainability. That is his battlefield. Not elimination, adjustment. In organized crime, survival often means managing disadvantage. Johnson becomes an expert at that. Long-term pressure changes people. Johnson spends years cycling between freedom and incarceration. Prison is not simply punishment. It is isolation. Time away weakens networks. Ambitious younger figures test authority during absence. When Johnson returns from prison, he must reassert control. Not through spectacle, through presence, through conversation, through reminder. He relies on reputation more than force, but reputation fades with distance, and the Genovese leadership does not pause operations during his imprisonment. They adapt around him. Adaptation signals something critical. The system does not require him. It prefers him. Preference is temporary. By the mid-1960s, organized crime across America faces new threats. Federal prosecutors begin using conspiracy laws more aggressively. Surveillance tools improve. Public tolerance decreases. The old model of visible territorial bosses becomes riskier. The Mafia shifts toward insulation, less visibility, more compartmentalization. Johnson, deeply tied to Harlem's public identity, represents an older style of leadership. Recognizable, embedded, symbolic. The Genovese structure increasingly favors anonymity. That strategic divergence widens the psychological gap. Johnson operates within community recognition. The Mafia operates within bureaucratic invisibility. One model draws loyalty. The other preserves longevity. Longevity wins. There is no meeting where Johnson is formally demoted. No announcement. No execution. Instead, influence diffuses. Heroin routes expand beyond Harlem. Other neighborhoods grow. Other distributors rise. Johnson's territory remains important, but no longer central. This is the final stage of the silent war. Marginalization without confrontation. He is not removed. He is surrounded by evolving systems. In organized crime, irrelevance is more common than assassination. Johnson continues operating into the late 1960s. Health declines, pressure remains, but the explosive confrontation many expect never arrives, because the war was never about domination. It was about balance. He balanced Harlem's internal order with external mafia control for decades. That balance required constant negotiation, constant awareness, constant restraint. Few underworld figures sustain that for long. Johnson does, until his body fails. July 7, 1968. A diner in Harlem. Bumpy Johnson collapses from a heart attack. No gunfire, no dramatic ambush, just a man who carried pressure for decades reaching physical limit. Thousands attend his funeral. Community members, associates, observers. His death does not trigger chaos. The heroin trade continues. The Genovese crime family continues. The pipeline remains intact. That outcome reveals the truth. The structure was never dependent on one man, but Harlem's internal stability had been. Johnson served as mediator between two worlds, local loyalty, global criminal enterprise. When he dies, that mediation disappears. The Mafia adapts. Harlem shifts. New figures rise, but the era of negotiated autonomy narrows. Federal prosecutions intensify in the 1970s. RICO laws strengthen cases against entire families. The old commission structure faces sustained assault. The silent war fades into institutional memory, not because it was resolved, but because it was absorbed into larger transformations. The conflict between Bumpy Johnson and the Genovese crime family was never announced. It had no battlefield, no formal surrender. It was fought in margins, in percentages, in prison visits, in quiet negotiations behind closed doors. Johnson did not overthrow the Mafia. The Mafia did not eliminate Johnson. Instead, they coexisted in controlled tension, until time removed the man, and the system continued without him. Because in organized crime, survival is not victory, and power is rarely loud. It is structured, silent, and patient.